Welcome everybody to Building Your Nonfiction Business. Really excited to have y'all here. This is a wonderful group of folks, and so I'm excited for them to share their wisdom with you. I'm Bryan Cohen from kickamsads.com, and let's get going. So, first and foremost, this is weird. Like the last one I did, I'm at a podium, and this I'm like, no, we're gonna slow things down. This is the smooth jazz panel right here. We're all sitting, it's all cool and everything. Take the mic a little further away from my mouth here. So, first and foremost, we have a image consultant and fashion author, Suze Solari. We also have I'll just say the name first. I like it, messed with my brain. We have Monica Leonelle of kickstartyournovel.com, but also many nonfiction books and many other wonderful projects. And then we have James Blatch, the puppeteer of Mark Dawson. We have, of course, the co-host of of their podcast and SPF and all of those wonderful things. So welcome, James. And a published author. Yes, congratulations, congratulations. Thank you. And we have Becca Syme of Better, Faster Academy, and we are, who does coaching and courses and books. And so what we all have in common here, up here today, is that everybody here is involved in something that can go beyond a book. Because don't tell the people outside of this room. So close the door. Close it real tight on the way out, okay? We got a secret.
All right, I'm going to stay for the secret and then
Okay, that's fine. So, secret is, everyone in these other rooms writes fiction, and what they can sell after a book is another book. What everyone in this room can sell after a book is really based on your creativity and ingenuity, because you can sell many different things other than just the nonfiction book, and that's something we'll be tapping into today. So here's how we're going to go. I'm going to ask all four of you a couple questions, then I'm going to ask each of you individually a question, and then what we will do, I will let you know when the time is right. I would love it if we had 5 audience questions today. The best place to ask them will be at that microphone. I'll let you know when it's time to start lining up. If we don't have 5, I'm going to weep into the microphone. So that is what you will hear.
Or start calling names.
Yeah, you in the back. No.
That work with your 4-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'd like you to start thinking about right now is, what if you had a question on how to double your revenue from your nonfiction books, what would it be? Just let the brains percolate there for a second. Think about that one, and then ask these people those questions so that you can get that increase in revenue. So, first and foremost, I want to ask, we'll start going this way, but we'll mix it up a lot so that it isn't just always starting with you, Suze. But I know, you could take it. I know you could take it. So, Suze, what does it mean to you to have a business around your book? You can take one of those. I think it's on now.
Hello, people. So the way you asked it is interesting. A business around my books. It's actually more like the books are around the business is the main thing. Okay, so I have an image consulting, personal styling business, and I started writing books to have a product. And this was some advice that was given to me actually by one of my clients who was starting to speak, and she was getting ready for a TED Talk. I got her dressed for her talk, and then we did her book launch. And she said to me, Suze, you need a product. And I don't even care if it's a bunch of gobbledygook inside. You stand up and you hold it and you say, I'm an expert. And that's what it was about for me, was to have social proof, to have part of my brand development is being an author as well. But at the time, I just thought of it as I have a product because I'm a service provider. And so there's a different way to go to market when you're selling a service. But if you have a product to support that, you're instantly recognized as an expert in your service field. So hopefully that answers your question.
It absolutely does. Thank you. Monica, same question to you.
Yeah, so I'm kind of the opposite. For me, my books were the business for a very long time, and then they kind of started taking off on their own. And now, I tried some courses, and those sell, somewhat well. But then what I'm seeing now is really that people, they're like, I read your book. Now I want like mentorship or coaching or something. And so that is something that I'm having to decide, like, do I really want to offer that? Do I want to add that on and make that a possibility? So, we're doing some of that, and it's a choice. I think that's the nice thing about a nonfiction business is that you can find out what people really want, and you can kind of structure it the way you want to do it. And so you can have these great product funnels that lead to one another. You can also kind of downsell to the book, or you can upsell to, one-on-one coaching is kind of like the top tier.
Awesome. Thank you. James, a published author, to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, a bit like Suze, I think it started with us with the product, with the courses that we wanted to sell. So for us, the books are pretty much 99% about lead generation. That's what they're about leads. They're not really so much, I think probably with you, Suze, it's also about credibility as an expert, establishing yourself with us. It's less about that because some of our books aren't authored by us. We get people in to author books on Instagram and so on. It's about leads, about bringing people in. But they came quite late in the process. We started with our main mini courses as our lead generation. Then we decided to do some books. And I did some figures this morning to see what impact they'd had on our list. We have a list of 204,000 at the moment. 82,000 of them came via those free books. So that's 41%. So it's a very significant part of our lead generation. In fact, more significant than I realised, which goes to show every now and again you should look at your lead generation and work out where people are coming from. It's very important to do that. So yeah, in terms of the structure of the books, we can talk about that a bit later. But for us, it's an integral part of bringing people into our universe.
I remember sending people to those books sometimes, so you're welcome.
Yeah.
For those 82,000 leads.
As I remember, through an affiliate link. So
Yes, that is true. That is true.
which I set up just for you.
Thanks, James. Becca?
So I love that we're all so different. I had a different experience as well. I actually was doing course creation, and the people who had taken the course asked me to write a book. So it was not something that I got into intentionally, writing nonfiction. And so that for me, what it means is I had to find a way to take what I do and translate it into a medium that was easily accessible by a lot of people, because I'm sure we'll talk about this later. The sort of core of my business is coaching, and so it's not mass appeal, right? Like it's one-on-one. And so for me, what it means to have that kind of combination of books and other things is that it was so different. Like my process was so different. I had to really figure out how to make a book that would replicate what I do in my business. So that was very interesting.
Awesome, thank you. So I love that we're all different here too, because I want us to see all the different ways, all the different paths. There is no one path, definitely, especially with nonfiction. So we're going to come back around the horn, as they say. So we'll go with you first, Becca. One of the things that fiction authors have kind of co-opted from online entrepreneurs is the concept of the funnel. And what I really want to stress with thinking about funnels is that if we eventually do have something beyond our books, what is the path? What is the path that people take? So I love that you were bringing up, Monica, just the idea of, okay, well, there's the book that we can downsell to one end, and then we have the one-on-one coaching that's on the other end. Becca, how, and this is a question for everybody, how do people make it from finding out about you originally to if they were to go all the way through the funnel, all the way through to your highest price offering, how do readers or just people figure that out? How do they get there?
So I love that you asked that because I don't actually know. And that is something that since being on this panel has taught me I need to figure that out about my business. Because so much of my business was generated by word of mouth, like we don't market or advertise. But the reason that that's possible, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, is because we are indeed research and developed the crap out of the very first product. So much so that like I aggressively asked people what was wrong, what didn't work so that we could fix it. And essentially got to a point where we had made a product that was that's sold by the people who were changed, who experienced the product. So for me, like I would say my funnel really happened when I spent all that time perfecting the process and making sure that what I put out was exactly what I wanted and would fix the problems that people were having, so that the funnel itself would really be someone talking to another person and saying, oh my gosh, you have to try this because it changed my life. So for me, I feel like my funnel is really, I guess, organic in that way.
James, published author.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we thought from the beginning, it predates us using books, but using our mini course as a free mini course as a lead generator, we thought we learned a little bit about the theory of the 7 touches, and some people have heard of the 7 touches, where you subliminally get all these different moments when you're aware of a product that leads you to the point of potentially buying it. And which touch was important for us was the sort of loyalty to Mark as him as the person. So we have a pretty traditional funnel. Someone gets our Instagram book or whatever. They have, I think, 9 or 10 emails over 2 weeks. But they've been very carefully crafted to really establish Mark as a friend of theirs, somebody in the same boat who's been through the struggles, a lot about his early disasters. And if you read them, a pretty good narrative. I mean, story is the heart of everything, right? Story is the heart of good selling as well as writing fiction. So that was it for us, I think, in terms of the funnel. I don't have any sort of magic advice on this apart from you've got to make a connection with people if they're going to trust you, and then ultimately get to the point of buying something from you.
Awesome. Thank you. Monica?
Yeah, for me, I think my personal story was important as well, because there are lots of books on the same topic that I write about, or the many topics that I write about now. But it was really telling my personal story in that first book that started to set the book apart in some way. And I didn't just tell my personal story. I told my story as a transformation that the reader wants to go through. And so using like treating yourself as the character and putting those exact steps in the process in your book, that establishes that connection as well. And so then the other thing I've seen is like going on podcasts is like kind of what brings people to the books. And really like the way people find me is through my books. So they'll read the book. They'll often read the next book and the next book. Like people come up to me and they're like, I've read like 4 of your nonfiction books. And I think a lot of that is they're kind of following the personal story and it matches theirs because every book is like something that I struggled with myself. And so I tell that story in there. And then going, having like podcasts like James's podcast. But yeah, going on podcasts, even starting my own podcast, that's been really important to me to find new readers, because I go on those podcasts and I tell my story again, and that's what they connect with. And then they're like, oh, like I've seen your books on Amazon or something. And that then they kind of go and they kind of come into my world. You can't stop reading if you read one.
Wow, where to start? Because there's so many facets to this question. I do have an element as well, similar to Monica's, about the personal origin of how I started and why I started my business. That does have that pull for someone who starts reading my books, and they all have a formula. The books. So they do definitely, okay, I've read the T-shirt and jeans handbook, and now I'm going to read the blouse and skirt handbook because I mastered that one. But they're all lookbooks too. So, I like to talk about them as, a digital reference for you to take into your closet with your iPad and say, oh, this is cute. Really, that goes together? Cool, I have one of those. And they put it together, kind of like a paper doll situation. And the books have actually also leaned into the next one, right? So after that one, I had a reader contact me by, the back matter information. So I have, always forms for them to contact me via my website, my email address, all my social media handles, right? So, and including my private Facebook group that I invite them into. So I had a reader reach out and say, I really loved your practical approach to your first 2 books, but I am struggling to, relate to the world because I wear a plus size. I would really like to see an inclusive book if you ever would think about writing a book for women with curves. And that then was like, wow, yes, that's my next book. And it was such a passion project. So I do lead to the others. And then I then created a book for packing, for travel packing, because that was such a pain point for clients. And then that was actually that was a response to a course. I made a video course, and then I basically had the manuscript after the course. So, and then as far as funnels, right? So that was kind of your original question. But I think I did mention that at the end of each book, there is ways to join my other parts of my community and then eventually work with me. Like, for example, the woman who bought the video course on travel packing, she's now hired me to fly out to DC in February and do a presentation to her networking group. So there's revenue that's coming from, like, my styling and speaking revenue is a result of making that course and writing that book. So
That's awesome. Yes, and I think just the thing you brought up, and that we should highlight, underline, and maybe like react bigger than them, because they just had like such a big laugh, and we're like, oh, they're having such a better time than us. But I know somehow. But there we go. Thank you. So what Suze pointed out was that a reader gave the idea for another thing, and I want to point out that just the importance of surveying, especially in nonfiction. It's a little harder to get really solid data from fiction surveying, but even in an email sequence, you could have a survey as the 3rd or the 4th email, and you could say, the big question is always what is your number one struggle? Right now, my number one struggle. No. I know. They're just watching TikToks for 45 minutes. Well, meanwhile, we're the ones laughing because they're fiction authors and we're nonfiction. So, but think about including a survey, and the big question is always, what is your number one struggle? And that is where these kind of things, because that person who needed to get dressed with plus sizes needed to know what is the best way to do that. Yes, Monica, please.
Yeah, so the first book I wrote was about writing faster, but then like people kept asking me questions about other stuff. And I was able to have 2 books that were, because I was like, well, I keep answering these same questions over and over. So I did 2 other books, and those books actually became more popular than the original. And so I think that's really helpful too, is to get those questions, see what people keep asking you, because they didn't find it in your other book. So now they need a new book for that.
Yeah, please. One of the mics.
Just when you get feedback from people also, I would encourage you to not see it as a negative on you, right? Because I think a lot of us have done this in the nonfiction arena, where either we release a second edition of a book, or we do something with expanded content, or potentially also like, could I make my product or process better by listening to the feedback? And I would always ask the question, like when we would get feedback, is this person my ideal, like my avatar, right, or not? Because if they're not my avatar, I don't want to listen to their feedback. But if they are, then I need to solve their problem. Because if they're having a problem with my product and they are my avatar, I have got to figure out how to solve that, or every single person who is like them is going to have the same problem and I'm going to lose them completely. So you may actually, and I consider it opportunity cost, right? Like I found so many more opportunities by letting people complain to me and figure out why they were having that problem and then solve that. Where like we're just starting a brand new class right now that came out of that exact issue, where I feel like seeing it as an opportunity instead of like taking it personally, right? Like I would always see that as it's my service to my potential avatar to solve all the problems that they have with what my expertise is.
Awesome. Yeah, James?
Something to that, because I think probably the thing that links all of this is answering questions, isn't it? When you're doing nonfiction marketing, you should be answering the question. Your top line should be the answer to a search. So we have I mentioned our Instagram for Authors book. It's a very big book for us. It answers a Google search. How do I do Instagram for Authors? And that comes up on SEO, or they've served the ad. Although there is also the other side of that. It's not. We've moved into a sort of clickbait era, haven't we? Over the last few years, people have worked out, I mean, even the BBC do this now with their stupid headlines just to get you to click. And you think, oh, I fell for it again. And so you can also provoke people. And another book that's done well with us is actually editing maxims. I think the book title is something like 5 Editing Maxims. It's basically confessions of an editor who knows where writers go wrong most often. And that's a very appealing thing for fiction writers, because we all struggle all the time and doubt ourselves, and seeing that as well. So they're the kind of the two trunks of it. But yeah, I wanted to mention the answering. Everything you do should be the answer to someone's question. And how do you find that out? When they come to you and they complain, or whatever it is. It's gold dust really for you.
Absolutely. 100% agreed. So, all right. I'm going to hit each of these 4 people up with a question specifically to them. But now is a good time to line up. If you want to go first, you get a pat on the back. I don't know. You have the opportunity. Yeah, we can give you a book. We can give you something. All right, awesome. So you'll hang there for a minute after these 4 questions. But, folks, like I said, I think at least 5 people should ask questions. Here's why. You have services, courses, podcasts, coaching, everything that could come from your books that could lead to a few hundred book sales turning into thousands of dollars in revenue could come from these folks who are here. So it is a good time to ask the questions that could potentially increase your revenue later. So, all right, good. We've got a little crew building up here. So, all right, we'll go back this way. So, Suze, when you started with services and went back to books, and now the books have, I'm sure, contributed to getting folks into the services as well. Do you think that if you had books alone, like only had books and then you did the service, do you think your business would have gone a little differently? Would you have done anything differently if it had kind of been the other way around? I know. Stroke the beard. Why don't you see? Think for a second.
Would it be different? Gosh, that's a good question. I guess I'm probably not going to answer the way that you might have expected me to.
No worries.
I never really intended to write a bunch of books. I resisted writing more. It was my husband, Joe Solari. It's like, crack the whip, write another book. Do you like money? Do you like money? Would you like some more money? Crack the whip, write another one. So, I resisted every single time to write another book, and was elated, of course, and happy that I wrote another one. But maybe it's something to do with the fashion industry or the style industry that I'm in. But I get a lot of surprise. Like, really? You have 5 books? Like, what could you possibly write on 5 times? I'm like, and I've got 2 other books that are floating around that people keep asking about. So, I don't think I answered your question, but
I don't care. You
so
gave good
there
information.
you go. Okay, I'm glad.
That's all I'm looking
glad
for
I can
here.
help.
Good
Glad I can help.
information
I mean,
here.
what I'm doing as far as my business, I'm scaling my business, so that's going into another direction. And so I have found that I may have this other aging well aging is sort of my next book, and my books are all for women. Sorry, guys. There's a folder for men. It's just. It hasn't. It is. I've got to just.
I hear there are a lot of women.
Got to double down. You know what? They need help the most because they have 2 jobs. All right, that's why. So right now it's about scaling my image consulting and going into that realm, those opportunities. So I really am not focused so much on writing books right now, but not to say that I won't in the future.
Right. Before I throw to your question, Monica. So start stewing in those juices. But I want to point out that for a nonfiction author, you know how fiction authors talk about read through. I mean, read through from book 1 to book 2. When you're a nonfiction author, all of your other non-book products count as read through. And your did you hear that? That means it's true. So if you are in the situation where you're like, people don't go from this one standalone to the other, it doesn't matter. Because if your future thing is a $97 thing or a $400 thing or an ongoing consulting thing, your read-through was just way better than TikTok people over there. Oh, my goodness. But anyway. So, Monica, I know that you have been really interested in a lot of the direct selling capabilities. You have, with multiple pen names, you have done direct sales off your website. You're working on kickstartyournovel.com, which ends Saturday, is it? Yeah?
Yeah, it ends Saturday.
So
Kickstarter.
kickstartyournovel.com. You've done the Kickstarter model. What benefits for nonfiction authors do you think the direct selling model holds?
Well, I think the biggest benefit, and it doesn't have to be a direct selling model. So again, I really enjoy writing books, and I would like my business to be a lot in books because it's very scalable, and other products as well. The direct sales for me, it's really about bundling, I think, and being able, because something I've seen is that when I create a series of books, people are kind of interested. If I do it right, people are kind of interested in all of them and they want to go through them. And so I can have that series of books and I can bundle them together and then sell them for, $77 or $97 and kind of do, the internet marketing model with that. But those people are buying books, and if they're buying books at that price, then they're going to kind of go on to do coaching or something else. So it's very much meant to be what the internet marketing world would call a tripwire, and if you can do that, then that person is very much in your world. They understand all of your baseline stuff, and then they can they're really ready to go on, because the book is not. I mean, it's a marketing tool. The book, you are giving them information, but you're also entertaining them. You're building a connection with them, and then you're selling to them. It is a sales tool. So you want to sell people into the ideas that you're trying to do. You want to sell people into the transformation that they want to make. And so that is kind of how my series work right now, and I can get them pretty interested in my coaching or whatever else, because they've invested 8 hours into reading my books now. So that's the biggest part for me.
That's awesome. Thank you. And hey, Tom, if you get any good photos of James and I'm in them, please feel free to send them to me. Okay, so James, you guys had this incredible skill set from your all the production experience that you brought, and obviously that shows in your courses, but also in your marketing materials. Obviously, there's a lot of people here who don't necessarily have those chops. When someone is saying, okay, I do think I want to make a course that could extend from my book, where do you think they should start? I mean, I think people like looking at that be like, oh my gosh, I can't put this BBC production value on my course. Where do you think they should kind of start with that?
Well, I would worry less about it than you think. John Dyer's at the back of the room somewhere. When John and I ran this video production business for a few years together before we moved to SBF, and I came from the BBC background, so I had a lot of production skills from that, and I was very snobby about user-generated video. Now, for instance, we'd work with big companies, and the CEO said, I've got his phone, it's got an amazing video camera on it, so I'm going to do some stuff, and we would go, don't do that stuff. You're a CEO of a multinational company, it needs to be polished on your front page, and we were proved wrong. Because 5 years later, the bit that grabs somebody and turns the corporate face into a human face is exactly a CEO talking down the lens to a crappy camera, and it doesn't matter whether it's quite in focus or not. And actually that's kind of guerrilla filming, whatever you want to call it, has a veritas about it, a connection with people. So I wouldn't get over worried about having big production value skill sets. It's less important than you think. Your product, kind of your course product, that obviously does need to be polished. I think it's probably, I don't think this is because we do it all the time. I think it's easier than you think to make it look quite polished in this day and age. We carry around these incredible cameras in our pockets now, don't we? And you just create some nice PowerPoint slides, and you can outsource quite a lot of this to make it look good. So quality where it's needed, like your delivery, when you don't want it to be a distraction from somebody. We do occasionally see courses where people are just talking to camera with bad edits and then looking down at their notes. That's not good. You do want that to be polished. But in terms of your marketing side of things, as the people next door are showing with their laughing at TikTok, it's about sincerity more than it is being polished.
Awesome, thank you. So, Becca,
Yes.
you have done a lot of coaching in your time, and how many of you here have considered, are offering or have considered coaching on your subject area? Okay, so we have a good smattering of those. Yes, exactly. Well, before they see you,
Yes.
kind of a similar question on this.
Yeah.
Let's say you're looking to get into coaching some of your audience.
Yeah.
People have all sorts of fears with the pricing and the everything. What should they go into this thinking?
So the first thing I would do, and I know this is going to be a little counterintuitive, but I would coach for free at first. Like for me, I wouldn't go straight into pricing because I think a lot of the barrier that we feel is about our expertise level. And once you start seeing like, hey, I literally coached 2,000 people for free before I started charging people. Just because I felt like, and you do not need to do that, by the way. I'm just a crazy person with my personality. But I wanted to make sure that what I could deliver to someone would actually deliver in a one-on-one setting in a way that felt like I would feel comfortable charging, especially because I'm also an author. Like I primarily am a fiction author. So I feel really conscious of charging fiction authors money. And so I am very, very careful about the product. But for me, I would start off at least coaching a little bit for free so you get a sense of how are people receiving it. Also, people are really willing to give you feedback if they feel like they're getting something. It's like a lead magnet. But if you've been coaching for a while, I wouldn't do that. And then at that point, I feel like from a pricing perspective, you are always going to underprice and undervalue your time. Everyone does. And what I experienced was, and I literally hired a business coach to ask questions about this because I was like, oh, I'm charging this. And he's like, you should be charging 3 times that amount of money for your time. And he wasn't talking about my time. He's just talking about the ability to get one-on-one individualized attention from somebody is worth a lot of money to people because you solved their problem one-on-one in 45 minutes, right? So I would say you're undervaluing your time, period. All of us do. And so I would charge higher than you think. But also, I wouldn't be afraid to play around with your prices. So I don't put my prices on the website specifically because for any of our coaches, we have 8 coaches that coach for me. And then additionally, we have other coaches who coach with us. But we don't put any of the prices on the website specifically because some of the coaches feel like it's uncomfortable to advertise what they coach, and it's really easy to contact our admin and say, how much does it cost? So it's like that extra step doesn't hinder people. So I would consider, if you're uncomfortable about advertising your price, just don't advertise it, and then play around with the price until you feel like you get a sense for what your avatar is willing to pay. So just as a for instance, I also do corporate coaching. My corporate price is twice what I charge authors because corporate expects that. So if I charge them a low price, they consider me to be a bad value and I won't get clients. So like when I coach a pharmaceutical CEO, if I charged him what I charge authors, he would literally think I was a hack. So you also need to know your audience well enough to know what their expectations are about what they're willing to spend.
Awesome, super helpful. Yes.
I just wanted to say one thing about if you are a new coach, you can use your program, you can call it a beta, and have people join so that you get the experience. That's what Becca's talking about, is getting experience so that you feel confident charging what you're charging. And the other thing that I did when I was first starting out my business 10 years ago is I did exchange of service. So I found somebody that needed help, getting dressed. All she wore was black and, had a little baby, but she was a great web designer, and we exchanged our services. And I've even done it where I've paid them a check and they paid me a check. So you have that money energetic.
Love that. All right. So for the folks who are asking questions, please say your name, kind of who your people are that you're writing for, and then ask your question.
All right. Can you hear me from here? Is this good?
Yes.
A little closer. Okay. I'm C.R. Rowanson. I write nonfiction for fiction writers about crafting and repairing magic systems. And I also... Thank you. I also do developmental editing and then coaching on writing fiction in general and, of course, magic systems. So my question is, as a speaker, how do you go about advertising and pricing that? Because a lot of stuff, it's easy to find averages and ranges, but speaking especially seems really all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say for this portion, it's okay if only one of us gives an answer. We don't all have to put in our 2 cents.
Yeah, I would say, again, audience is super critical because the different conferences have different budgets. And so, like, I don't charge small RWA chapters the same amount that I would charge, like, NINC, for instance, to present. So I would say be okay with having a range of prices that you charge. And I would definitely not underprice. Like, from a perspective of, we want to understand that people have budgets, but also, like, if you're going to put the time in, especially if you are doing this for a living, I would rather see you have to turn down engagements every once in a while than have to go back and, like, get another job again, right? Especially if you're an expert and you're in demand and people are recommending you, I wouldn't undercharge.
Awesome. Do you have any follow-up questions?
I can follow up afterwards.
Okay, sounds good. All right, next up.
Hi, my name is Aaron Linsdow. I do mostly adventure books and how-tos of, how do you go not die on a mountain? Those sort of things. Two-part question, if you don't mind. First
No
is, when you guys were talking about direct sales, like literally you were fulfilling, you like Monica, like you were literally the one putting the book or the product in the package. I mean, you're at this conference. How do you manage that?
Well, so yeah, that's an interesting question. So I'm not taking sales on my website during this conference. Yeah, I'm talking more about ebooks. So I have ebooks packaged and doing Facebook ads to them. I mean, I think the way to do that is either you close down your store or you say shipping's going to be delayed while I'm gone, or that sort of thing. So I think it's just managing your time, or you hire somebody.
Before you go to part 2, I was in the direct sales panel. I don't know, was anyone in there? Direct sales panel. So we know a solution for this now. So Katie Cross, who is a YA. I almost said a YA because of YA. That is where my brain is after 3 presentations today. A YA fantasy author. So maybe they heard that over there. So, but she uses a plugin integrated with Shopify called Lulu Express. Lulu, the POD, publish on demand or print on demand. So that integrates with her Shopify store. So if someone buys buys the book in paperback, they take care of it. It usually, I think, was like a 4 or 5 day process or something. So that is another potential solution to that.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
For the digital side, she used advanced something.
Yeah, for the digital side, you can use the book funnel or.
Yeah, and I think she said she used a system where as soon as an order was placed, there was some kind of coding where it would send the link to the digital product immediately, and then they would also send a link from their like customer service email. So it was all not waiting for her hands to touch it. So she could be at the conference and still have success.
Right. I think she used Klaviyo for her email. But did you have a part two?
Yeah, so
Okay.
For the people who are doing courses, did you build your own website? Are you serving your own video off your sites? I mean, because I've seen some people that spend major bucks to create an entire course ecosystem that's on their site. That I mean, a lot of web hosts ban like you cannot serve video because it will crush them. How are you doing that sort of thing?
James?
Yeah, when we started, we used an off-the-shelf course provider, and we imagined at some point we would build our own. And I think at the time Nick Stevenson had built his own. But actually, why would you need to do that? These off-the-shelf things are perfectly good. They're much better. They're specialists. It's a bit like the old analogy. In the old days, these big corporations in New York ran their own canteens. Then at some point, somebody on the board dealing with endless problems of personnel in the canteen said, why we're not a canteen, we're a bank. Let's outsource it. So, that's, for me, we use Teachable. And there's lots of them around. We'll stay with them because I love the fact that they look after that. And all we do is upload our stuff to it, and it works fine.
And Teachable doesn't charge extra for video hosting, so
no, it's a good fit. So you're just going to give yourself more of a headache. If you need to do it in-house, if there's a reason for it, I can't think of it, then use an off-the-shelf.
Okay. And is it okay to share numbers? Is everybody comfortable with that? With my coaching? So Becca, you're talking about coaching for me. I've had people, can you do coaching this and that for corporate? I've said, hey, I'll charge $20,000, and they're like, oh yeah, that sounds good. A month. Just and then for speaking, my normal fee is $10,000 for corporate. So when you're saying, hey, we'll charge $750 or something, you're leaving tens of thousands of dollars on the table.
Depending on who your audience is.
Yeah,
Right.
audience specific. If you've ever heard of National Speakers Association, great resource. So they'll open your eyes to, oh wow, this is a thing. So thank you so much.
yeah, and thank you for sharing that. That's always good when we get to share numbers with each other that help us. We are going to definitely have time for 2 questions. If not the third, we will come up afterwards. Yes.
Hi, my name is Trish, and I haven't actually written anything. My husband is an author, but I've done a lot of research into things that I am good at, and I've been discouraged from starting anything because so many of the people out there that are content creators, basically, I feel because I have physical disabilities and stuff, I can't constantly be pushing out everything all the time, and I don't have money to pay other people to do a bunch of stuff for me all the time. Like, do you really have to be constantly offering free and whatever?
I heard the word strength, so we're going to
No.
talk to Becca.
You definitely don't. And I would actually say, I think one of the mistakes that we make is trying to do everything at one time, right? So I would be the person who would say, do whatever you can do and don't worry about what you're supposed to be doing, because if you pick one thing and do it really well, you don't have to do 50 things. Even if you can eventually add other income streams, but I do feel with the saturation, doing one thing and doing it well is a much easier, when you have limited time for any reason, is much easier, and it also makes your learning curve a lot shorter. So instead of trying to learning curve 14 different things at once, you do one and you go all that time in one direction. So you don't have to do, we've all said this, right? You don't have to do anything, but specifically when you do have limited time, I for sure would focus as narrowly as possible and try to make more progress in one direction first, and kind of figure out, like, of all the things that I could be doing, what's the thing that I'm the best at right now, and then go in that direction for a while, especially because, and this is so important, you have decades and decades of life in front of you, like almost all of us, right? Like, and again, even if you think you don't, you probably do. So don't feel like you have to do everything now. You're not going to miss out on anything. It's better to do it the way you're going to do it than to try to do everything and burn yourself out. And so, yeah, I would pick one thing and do it. Yeah.
And then my other really short thing is, like, if you know, I mean, everybody still has growth that they need to do. Nobody is perfect, right? But, like, there's that kind of concept out there that to be an expert, you have to be, like, the #1 expert. So, like, how do you speak to where, like, I know I can do this thing good. Yes, there's other people who can do way better with their skill set. But, again, those people are going to charge $10,000, you know, and I'm not, right? So how do you get kind of started there?
And frankly, somebody may prefer to hear your voice rather than theirs, because the crazy part about such a huge world and how many consumers there are is there are people who would resonate more with you than would resonate with, you know, if you didn't get a chance to listen to Nora Phoenix's Killing It in a Small Niche, I highly recommend you go back and listen to that. Or if you read The Dip by Seth Godin. Seth Godin? Right. Yeah. I get him and Gladwell confused. Yes. So the concept of being #1 in a small niche or #2 in a small niche, don't worry about the bigger, right? Because there are people, everybody in this conference, there is a niche of people who want to hear from you and want to hear your voice, and there's no reason to, you know, not put that out there, because there might be people who resonate with you that won't with anybody else.
Thank you all.
So I just want to have some final thoughts, very short and quick because we're already over time, but what you think people should do next in order to get the most out of their nonfiction. Why don't you start, Suze, and we'll just quickest final thoughts ever.
Okay, really quickly, just make the product. I mean, you know, do a digital PDF. It could be 5 pages long. It's a pamphlet, and you can market it as a book, and you are an author.
Awesome. Yeah, just quickest things ever.
Map out your product funnels so you know how customers flow through your product catalog.
Look at people who are doing really well and copy them.
Mm-hmm.
Accurate. And talk to us. Like, come and find people who know what they're doing and ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask us questions.
Let's give a round of applause for our panelists today. Thanks, everyone.